Good evening, and welcome to the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen of the City of New York and the launch of the 7th season of the Artisan Lecture Series. On behalf of the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen, I would like to give an especially warm welcome to President Matthew Holland and all of our guests visiting from Utah Valley University. My name is Victoria Dengel, and I'm the Executive Director of the General Society. Okay. For those of you less familiar with our organization, the General Society was founded in 1785 by the skilled craftsmen of New York City, artisans who represented 22 different trades, including carpenters, saddlers, tailors, and silversmiths, among others. Today, this 231-year-old organization continues to serve the people of the City of New York through its educational and cultural programs, including our Tuition-Free Mechanics Institute, the General Society Library, and our nearly 2-century-old lecture series. The Society is also home to our Lock Museum, the John M. Mossman Lock Collection, which is currently housing the exquisite stained glass exhibit, Roots of Knowledge. The space you are in this evening is the library of the General Society. Founded in 1820, it is the second oldest library in New York City and one of the city's 3 remaining membership circulating libraries. Our archives go back to 1785, and we also have New York Times bestsellers. That is a range. Tonight, we gather once more to pay tribute to the art of craftsmanship. The Artisan Lecture Series, now in its 7th season, has committed itself to giving voice to internationally known artisans who will talk about the intricacies of their specialized crafts. The mission of the Artisan Lecture Series is to promote the work and art of skilled craftsmen to assist in ensuring that their unique knowledge is understood and carried forth for future generations. This program is supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council. Tonight, we have a very special lecture, program, and exhibit celebrating work of master stained glass artisan Tom Holdman and his team at Holdman Studios. Roots of Knowledge, conceived by Utah artist Tom Holdman and commissioned by Utah Valley University President Matthew Allan, combines the work and guidance of 40 professional artists, 26 UVU scholars, and more than 350 UVU students. Amazing. For those of you who have not been upstairs yet to see the exhibition, you are in for a magnificent experience. And we can't say it enough, we feel so fortunate to have had this opportunity to present a temporary home for Roots of Knowledge exhibition and its accompanying family, which has become our family here at the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen. As you are about to hear, the story of Roots of Knowledge is a wonderful, moving, and inspirational one. This is a project for the ages. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you Rebecca Allan, who will begin the program this evening. Rebecca Allan, who we've also grown very close to, worked with the Utah Valley University team and Holdman Studios to plan this evening's program and to curate the Roots of Knowledge exhibition. Rebecca is a New York-based painter, educator, writer, and arts administrator. She has exhibited her work both nationally and in the UK for the past 25 years. From 2006 to 2014, Rebecca was the Director of Education and Public Programs at the Bard Graduate Center for Studies in the Decorative Arts, Design History, and Material Culture. It is now my pleasure to introduce our friend Rebecca Allan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria. It really just fills my heart to sit here this evening. It's an evening that we've been imagining together with our new friends from Utah and the General Society for many, many weeks. Good evening and welcome to Illuminating Knowledge, commissioning a major work of stained glass to foster engaged learning at Utah Valley University. I'm Rebecca Allan, and it's been my great pleasure to participate in the curation of the exhibition with Utah Valley University and Holdman Studio here at the General Society Library. 1,000 thanks to Victoria Dengel and Karen Taylor for the opportunity to present this exhibition here, to President Holland, Tom Holdman, Ross Wolfsey, and Stephen White, and Thatcher and Company for all that you have done and for inviting me to be a part of this. Art is a window onto knowledge of oneself, one's culture, and one's environment. We seek experiences with works of art because they illuminate and cultivate the best in us, our desire to learn, to engage with the world, and to expand our gifts and talents for the benefit of others. Roots of Knowledge, a newly commissioned work of stained glass at Utah Valley University, a part of which is now on view upstairs in the Locke Museum, reaches toward these goals. And tonight we have the good fortune to learn about its genesis and evolution from its creators. We'll begin with a short lecture by Cybele Maylone, Executive Director of Urban Glass in Brooklyn, followed by Utah Valley University President Matthew Holland, and then a panel discussion with stained glass artist Tom Holdman and UVU Professor of English Kate McPherson. On your seat you will find comprehensive bios of all of the participants tonight, which were so rich and lengthy that we didn't want to take up all of our introductory time with those. But I would like to briefly introduce the participants. Matthew Holland is the president of Utah Valley University, where he has been serving since 2009. Before assuming this position, President Holland was an associate professor of political science at Brigham Young University, where he taught courses in political philosophy and American political thought. Thomas Holdman is a stained glass artist and CEO of Holdman Studios in Lehi, Utah. An aspiring artist who attended UVU, Tom started Holdman Studios in 1988 in his parents' garage. He has since created stained glass displayed in all 50 states and worldwide for commercial buildings, private residences, and public art features. Tom's creations are also found in many religious institutions, including Catholic, Mormon, and Protestant sanctuaries. Kate McPherson is Honors Program Director and Professor of English at UVU. She teaches English Renaissance literature, including courses in Shakespeare on campus and regularly on UVU's London Study Abroad program. And Cybele Maylone is the Executive Director of Urban Glass in Brooklyn, the largest and only artist-access glass-blowing facility in the New York metropolitan area. She has worked at museums and arts organizations, including the Museum of Natural History, the New Museum of Contemporary Art, Art Table, and most recently, Apex Art. Welcome to the speakers, and I'd like to ask Cybele Maylone to come to the podium.
Good evening. Thank you, Rebecca. My name is Cybele Maylone, and I'm the Executive Director of Urban Glass, an arts organization in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the organization and our history, and then I'll talk a little bit about how stained glass is a really vital part of the work that we're doing today. Urban Glass was founded in 1977 on Great Jones Street in Soho by a group of artists that moved to New York City with dreams of making work and making work in glass, and who encountered some of the very real concerns that many artists today still have around real estate. I hear this resonates with many people here tonight. establishing a private studio in New York City was and remains incredibly expensive, and add glass to that and it becomes virtually impossible. The specialized equipment required, the natural resources involved, the technical expertise to manage that equipment meant that these individual artists were unable to set up their own studios. But they had the great idea to form an organization together, which at the time was called the New York Experimental Glass Workshop, and set up a shared space where artists and educators could come together and learn and make in glass. This is an image of our studio. We moved in the early 80s to Mulberry Street. This is an image of that studio. The person in the foreground is Dale Chihuly. The artist sitting at the bench is William Morris, and the artist, the woman in the back of the photo, is an artist named Toots Zinsky. So really, from the organization's earliest days, some of the leading figures in glass and art making have been coming through our studio and really relying on our studio. In addition, many of these great artists not only started their careers in our studio, but have continued to be important educators, kind of helping to bring along the next generation. In 1991, we moved to Brooklyn, and this is a picture of our facility when we moved into it. It was an abandoned theater, and we took over the 3rd floor of the space. It was a different Brooklyn, for those of you that have been there recently. We were surrounded mostly by abandoned buildings, but the reason that the artists that were leading what became urban glass at the time sought this building out was both it was a huge amount of space and it's also really accessible via public transportation. Knowing that artists were going to come to our studio from all around the city and really all around the country, being in a place that was easy to get to was important. The neighborhood has grown with us, which has been a delight. We took over the 3rd floor and operated our studio program and our exhibition program in that space until 2011, when we closed for 2 years to renovate. With our co-tenant in the building, Brick, and the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs did about a $62 million renovation of our facility. And one of the really important things that this did for us was gave us a public face. I think this has really been a transformative moment for the organization. So what you're looking at right now is the exterior of our Agnes Ferris Art Center, which is home to our store, Urban Glassware, and our exhibition program. Urban Glass has always, at its core, even in our earliest days, had a desire to both support artists making work, but also give the public opportunities to learn about that work and facilitate a conversation about new directions in art making. Of course, when you can do that on a ground floor of a building, it opens up a whole new world to you. The kind of the audience has changed dramatically. This is an image of a recent exhibition that we presented in our gallery space called Graham Caldwell Emergence. Graham is a Brooklyn-based artist who makes work in a variety of ways in glass. He's relatively unique in that way. He makes both extraordinarily ornate hand-blown objects, and then this piece, which is in the center of the room, called Watching Machine, which is, of course, made up of commercially available security mirrors. This is the current exhibition that we have on view called Nancy Cohen Hackensack Dreaming. Nancy is an artist based in New Jersey, and this large-scale installation is a meditation on an area of the Hackensack River in the Meadowlands where humans and industry and commerce have all come rushing together to create a really particular and odd environment where nature sits among strip malls and the highway. This installation is comprised of handmade paper and sculptural installations made out of recycled glass. And I think these 2 shows, I hope, speak to the breadth of programming that we seek to offer, and I think mostly also addresses the great breadth that exists in glass as a material. I think that's something that's really important in our studio program, and also as we seek to facilitate a conversation about what artists are doing in the material, showcasing how an artist like Nancy is finding sheets of plate glass and putting them in her kiln, and an artist like Graham is blowing forms in the studio, I think help to highlight that great diversity of the material. We also publish Glass Quarterly magazine, which was started in 1979 by the organization and remains really the leading publication about the material. It, much like our exhibition program, seeks to obviously address work that's made in our studio, but also shine a light on excellent work that's being made around the country and around the world. Now, when you go upstairs, that's where the real magic happens. This is an image of our glass blowing studio. These are 3 artists working together. Edison Zapata, Romina Gonzalez, and Jared Beck, who are doing mold blowing in our studio. I think this is an interesting thing, seeing and thinking about Roots of Knowledge tonight, that is really relevant to glass and glass making, and that it is very much a collaborative process. And so I think, obviously, the method that you've gone about this project seems like a wonderful extension of the glass community as a whole. This is an image of a class taking place in our studio. We, as I mentioned, we're really intent on supporting the artists that are already making work in the material and providing opportunities for emerging artists to access glass. We, in addition to the classes and workshops we teach for students of all ages, we also teach in the BFA and MFA programs at New York University and Pratt Institute. And this is an example of an artist at work at our flame working studio. I'm not going to give you guys too much technical information about all of these ways of making, but there's a huge amount of applications of the kind of work that can be made in this facility. This is an artist named Jamie Harris, cold working in our cold shop, perhaps the least glamorous part of the studio, as there's no fire involved. And this is an image of recent work that was made in the studio. This is a sculpture by an artist named Taube Arbach that was on view at her gallery Paula Cooper last winter. This is a kiln-formed knife. And this is work by an artist named Sherry Mendelson. Sherry is, and I think this also relates to stained glass, an artist who's really interested in the history of glass and glass making. I find that many artists come to glass for a variety of different reasons. Some are really interested in the scientific properties of the material, which is, of course, fascinating. Some are interested in the formal qualities of this beautiful and reflective material. And some are really interested in the deep history. And, of course, all of those overlap as well. Sherry is someone that's looking at Greek and Roman glass and creating really extraordinary objects out of recycled plastic. And then these objects are then the plastic versions that have been then pushed through glass. So, to stain glass at Urban Glass. This is an incredibly active part of our studio program. And I think one that we see a great amount of interest, in particular in our education programming. Obviously, artists can, with greater ease, set up a stained glass studio in New York City, but it still is something that there's a need to learn about before the real work begins. And we've seen, since our reopening in 2013, a great demand in terms of our workshop program for stained glass and also for artists using our studio. So this is just a little snapshot to give you a sense of some of the things student work in process. That central image is an aerial shot of artists at work in what we call our flat shop, which is where stained glass takes place. And these are just some process shots of work that's being made in our studio right now. As you can see, there's a great variety of abstract work, a natural environment. We also have artists doing lots of things like silk screening on glass. And of course, a lot of those artists come to us because they've been inspired by stained glass that they're seeing out in the world. And I think there's a huge amount of contemporary art and artists that are engaged with stained glass, this being a great example. This is an artist named Gerhard Richter, a German painter, and this is an example of windows that he did for a German cathedral. Certainly, stained glass in architecture is a very natural extension of the way that the work can present itself, and certainly the Roots of Knowledge Commission is a perfect example of that. I think oftentimes painters and artists that are already working in two dimensions find stained glass to be a natural extension of that. Stained glass allows you to paint with light, and it allows you oftentimes to tell a story. This is work by Kiki Smith, and this work is actually in New York. This is at the Eldridge Street Synagogue. Kiki is an artist that's had a long time association with urban glass and has been making work in our studios for many years. She is an artist that is working in a variety of materials and has made work in glass in many ways. This is certainly her largest scale glass project, and this is a really stunning and recent work. This is a work of stained glass by an American artist named Kehendi Wiley. Kehendi is known for his painting, primarily, which are they're almost history paintings of contemporary figures in historical settings. He had a large exhibition at the Brooklyn Museum maybe 2 years ago that presented these paintings of great significance alongside his new work in stained glass, which, much like Sherry's work, is looking at the kind of historical language and traditions of the material and presenting it in a contemporary landscape. So you can see, obviously, there's a central figure of a young gentleman wearing Timberland boots and contemporary clothing, surrounded by what we would think of as a very traditional vernacular language of stained glass. Now, in addition to artists that are coming to stained glass from other materials and other ways of making, there are also many artists that are working exclusively in stained glass, and there's a really rich tradition of artists doing that in New York City and really around the country. This is a work by an artist who is based in Philadelphia named Judith Schechter. She is one of the most well-known and, I would say, inspiring artists making work in stained glass now. She is a frequent educator and lecturer in our studios, and she is incredibly sought after. I will encourage any of you, if you have the chance to hear Judith speak, to run. Not only is she an incredibly interesting artist, but she's quite a delight to listen to talk about her work. And she also is marrying this technical language of stained glass with a contemporary vocabulary, and also pushing her work into the third dimension, not just through light, but also through sculptural properties of carving and actually bringing figures off the glass. These are two examples of recent works of hers. She shows at Claire Oliver Gallery and is the only artist making work in glass to have ever been included in the Whitney Biennial. So her work, again, she has this really deep connection and tradition within glass and the stained glass community, but her work is also seen on a very large scale. This is work by an artist named Joseph Cavalieri, who's also an active member of our studio community, who came to Urban Glass about a decade ago. He'd been working as an art director in magazines, took a stained glass class, took another stained glass class, took another stained glass class, and the rest is kind of history. Joseph is now a working artist who teaches a lot for us as well, and has, I think, been really inspirational for the next generation of artists that are learning about stained glass in our studio community. His work marries, he's found a really interesting language to use in his work, and that he is really looking at pop art and the large flat planes of color in those paintings and marrying them with stained glass, which creates this work which it feels both very contemporary and also mid-20th century, and then also related to the material that it's in. This is another recent example of his work. And I wanted to end just by telling you a little bit about some of the young emerging artists that are making work in stained glass, both in our studio and around the country. Again, it's a place that we've seen incredible growth, and these are the artists that we'll be looking at in the future, whose work will surely be in museums and galleries around the city. This is an artist named Justin Tyner. He's actually based in Philadelphia, and this is an installation that he did at the Philadelphia airport. And I'm sorry to leave you with a kind of garish image in my parting shot, but this is an artist named Doreen Garner who makes work in our studio. Doreen is interesting in that she makes work in a wide variety of ways of glass making, which is often unusual that she blows glass, although I understand that Tom does that too, and also makes work in stained glass. And she's again employing really contemporary imagery with and combining that with a deep technical knowledge and making work that I think we will all be seeing now for years to come. So thank you very much.
President Holland?
Well, Cybele, thank you very much. It's an honor for us to have you with us tonight. And we don't have rotting teeth in the Roots of Knowledge, but we have everything else in our presentation. So I always believed, as we got into this project, that it would merit the attention of national experts. And so to have you here and have your vote of approval for what we're doing really means a lot. We're very thankful for you. Very grateful to Rebecca and her role as host tonight and helping to organize this great event. And to all of you, it's such an honor for us to be here from Utah Valley University. And I won't take long, but I do want to tell the story about why Utah Valley University is here in the heart of Manhattan today, talking about a stained glass art project. And the story starts 75 years ago. And that's when Utah Valley University got its start. This was our first campus in 1941. And as I like to say, those buildings were dilapidated in 41. It was a great story. It got started towards the end of the Depression, and a lot of people concerned about people who were sort of making it barely through public works programs, but wanted to move on, needed additional training, post-secondary training, and so this effort was made with very little resources to create a school that would create training for the vocational and trade arts. And so we started doing that and opened doors in 1941, and 75 years later, this is our campus. Thank you. Thank you. So we have only been a university for 8 years, and we're now the largest university in the state of Utah. And I believe that part of the success, part of it's we grow and we live in a fast-growing part of the state, but I think the bigger issue here is our mission. And our mission is a part of the story tonight. So let me explain that. We have a unique dual mission. So we have built out, I think, this really extraordinary teaching university with more than 75 bachelor's degrees, 8 master's degrees, increasing levels of preparation by our students and our faculty. But right along with that, we have kept and embraced and even amplified our original role as a trade and technical training college, if you will. And so side by side with that, we are a school that remains open admissions. We have active outreach to underrepresented populations, and we have increased our associate's degrees and certificate programs, which are primarily in the trade and technical arts. And this unique model means that sitting side by side is a kind of a 2-for-1 institution where there's something for everybody, and that's part of the draw, I think, for why we've become so popular, why students have come, and why they're staying. And so for us, partnering with this venerable institution just seemed like the perfect fit. So here's an institution over 230 years old that still is committed to the trades and the technical arts and providing tuition-free education in the same way that we're trying to reach out. We're not quite tuition-free, I wish we were, but with a similar commitment to access and outreach to those students who frankly need education the most. And so to Victoria and Karen, we're very grateful for our association with you. We're deeply honored to be part of the noble efforts that you've been working on for over a couple of centuries. We're only 75, but we're proud of what we've done and just thrilled with this newfound partnership. So with that, let me just get into the story of this project, the Roots of Knowledge, and how it came about. And you'll be introduced to Tom Holdman later, the artist. Tom came into my office. I'd only been president for a few months, actually, and he said, I've got this idea. I want to do the history of knowledge and the written word in stained glass. And he rolled out in front of me a scroll, if you will, that looked like this. Actually, it was this. As he talked, I got so excited because I could see the potential of this. It would be a great statement for what we were becoming. We'd just been made a university. We were coming, again, building off of the trades and technical arts, but becoming a true university, which is what universities stand for, the collection of all knowledge and insight and the pursuit of truth. And so to have a project that symbolized that, I loved the idea of taking an ancient art form and translating it into something that would be appropriate for a modern secular environment. And so all that made a lot of sense. But I thought, it's got to be bigger. You look at these panels and they're great, but you see some panels were a single person or a single story. And I said, Tom, I love the idea. I think we want to do this, but I'd like to make it bigger and more expansive. We need more stories. We've got to bring more into it. It's got to be more layered with more elements because there's so much there. We also there was a concept about where to put this, and this was at the back corner of our library, and you can see There are about, between these two sides, are about 14 or 15 panes of glass, and it's right along this busy intersection. In any case, I said, and I'm not sure that space works, because I think this is something we want people to be able to view and be part of and have it be an engaged learning experience. So he said, great, those ideas resonate with me, let me go think about that. And so he went away, and I didn't hear from him, and I didn't hear from him, and I thought, well, he's forgotten me, and this was just sort of a fun idea that's gone the way of all the earth. And then, about 9 months later, he came back and showed me a sketch like this. And I'm like, I think we can do business now. So after I picked myself up off the floor, sat in the chair, caught my breath, and thanked him. I said, absolutely, this is what we want to do. And this was obviously just the beginning, looking at the dawn of creation. And that's when I knew we really had a partnership here. And so we said, let's do this thing, and let's do it as a partnership. Let's be involved with your studio and our university. And then it just grew. And those few panels then turned into 80 different panels, bookended with these 30-foot panels on each side. Those are 30 feet in height. And then these two rows actually run, contiguous. They're 10 feet high. And there are 26 columns, so columns from A to Z, little symbolism in that, if you will, again, to make a comprehensive statement about the collection and dissemination of knowledge. Now, I'll let you in on a secret. Not every bit of knowledge is in these windows, okay? But it's very close, thanks to Tom and his genius, and the input that we've had from our university faculty. And by the way, once we saw the expansiveness of that, we said, well, obviously that little corner spot is not going to work, and so it didn't take long for both Tom and me to jointly come to the conclusion that it needed to go at the front of the library, and it's going to go right in these bank of windows. So those are 10-foot windows all along there. It's about 170 feet long, and then on each side, you can't see them, are the 30-foot bank of windows, and that's really the heart of the new campus. You can't see it, but we have a new 250,000 square foot classroom building here. Our old liberal arts building is here that's now filled with new programs, and it'll be the future build-out space of the university. And so I've heard it said, that the library is to the university what the kitchen is to the home. Okay, and this is our heart. And this is where we will gather, and this is where our students will study and converse and interact and meet with faculty. And they'll do it under this new, powerful, colorful glaze of these spectacular windows, which that's from the inside looking out. That helps you see how neat that curvature is of that wall that has this already sort of artistic look to it without the windows even inside. We've gone about recreating. There used to be a big set of stairs in here, but we're getting ready for the press of attention and the people that will come through. We've ripped out those stairs and trying to prepare the area for what we think will be a steady stream of visitors. You can see if you make out just on the corner, that's the first 30-foot panel that's over there. So there's that 30-foot panel there, and then there's this one on the end that are the bookends, and then the 80 panels will run all along there. And these panels, really, here again, a little glimpse, if you haven't seen the ones upstairs, nothing can compare to seeing it in living color, so you have to go upstairs if you haven't already. But this gives you a little bit of a glimpse of some of the other panels. But it really is this powerful fusion of art, education, and public space that brings together this commitment we have as a humanity to produce knowledge and to produce the creative arts and the practical arts and the things that define us as a human civilization that will be honored here in these windows, and we believe a source of inspiration and study for students, and not just our own students. We hardly even had to ask, but we've partnered with the Utah Educational Network, which represents all of the public schools in Utah. They've already said, we want to be your partner. They're designing curriculum. They've already scheduled the field trips for the buses to show up. Tom will be doing the valet parking for them. I haven't told him that yet, so it's part of the deal. He's creating all these good problems for me. In any case, Tom and his partner Cameron Oscarson have been just the ideal partners. At the beginning, it was really just the two of them. It was Tom literally in a number 2 pencil sketching this out, and then over time, they've had to turn this into a full production. And I teased Tom a little bit. Not only is he a genius artist, he's become a very fine manager administrator. In fact, I'm a little worried about my job now. Because he's hired a bunch of artists and folks from different disciplines to do this massive structure with over 80 different panels, 60,000 different pieces of glass. It's taken him over a decade to complete, and we couldn't be more honored to be the repository of it. It's being installed as we speak, so it's going to take a number of weeks to actually put in, and it's being put in under cloak. Because what we're doing is preparing it for an unveiling on November 18th, and this will be the culminating moment of our 75th anniversary. So we were looking at, we started this program 7 years ago, but it was not long after that we realized as we thought about the timing, what a perfect way to celebrate our 75 years of history as an institution and to signal where we're going for the next 75 years. So those are being installed as we speak. And a key component in all this, I think, has been the engagement with the university, starting with the students. We've had more than 355 students already involved. One of our core themes at Utah Valley University is engaged learning, learning by doing, taking what you're learning in the classroom and the textbook and applying it to the world around you. So we've had students working in many different areas, helping them. The young man on the right, he's my personal intern. Tom was in a crisis this summer, needed a project done. I said, take my intern and go. The young man in the middle was the first intern that Tom hired for this project, who now works full-time at Holdman. So it's turned into full-time employment for several of our students, but also with the faculty. You'll be treated to hear from Kate McPherson, who's there in the middle, an outstanding scholar of Shakespeare and English literature, and she's been part of this faculty working group, along with Wayne Hanowitz, the chair of our philosophy department, and Ann Arendt from the technology department. So faculty from all different kinds of disciplines giving advice and feedback and reaction to Tom's ideas, and this wonderful, rich back and forth about how to make this more accurate, fuller, and richer in every way. And it's just been a delight to watch this unfold. Intellectually, it's been a delight to see how this group has worked and interacted with Tom and his team of artists and creative thinkers. And so with that, I want to just give you just a glimpse of the kind of detail that are in these panes. So here are two panes. We could have picked, any of the 80 to show you. I picked this one because I'm partial to this. I'm a political scientist and a student of the American founding. And so obviously the panel that treats the late 1700s is going to be of interest to me. But of course, if you look carefully, this is not just about the American founding. And this is definitely not got an American, even an Anglo-American focus. It's a broad worldview. I mean, it starts with the Egyptians and treats the Mayan calendar and moves all the way up into contemporary times in places all over the globe. But, and you see that here, so it starts with the Emperor Long of China, with the longest reigning emperor in China, to Mary Wollstonecraft, the early Enlightenment feminist philosopher. But of course, I love this treating of the signing of the Declaration. And what I love about it is that it's so filled with detail that goes beyond the conventional reading of that. So that's a fairly famous picture, if you will, of Jefferson, Adams, and Franklin signing the Declaration, but then so many nice little touches. For instance, Jefferson is holding in his hands there the architectural drawings for the University of Virginia, one of the great architectural design accomplishments in our nation that Jefferson was responsible for. Adams is holding a letter to Abigail. And as you know, the correspondence between Abigail and John Adams became a famous manifestation of this great male-female partnership that was key to the ideas of liberty that developed at that time. Franklin is holding a copy of the Pennsylvania Gazette with a copy of Poor Richard's Almanac on the table and the kite down in his other hand. So these are all the little details, even down to, here's Washington and Lafayette. And Washington is holding in his hand the key to the Bastille. Now, the key to the Bastille is something that Lafayette gave to Washington as a gift. We still have the key. It sits at Mount Vernon, and it's been copied in scrupulous detail and represented here. So, as you can see, in this pane alone, there are 43 different stories. And that's one of the lighter ones, I would say. Some of these panels have over 100 different stories of historical note in them. And this would be an example. I selected this one just because it's one of the panes that has a real New York focus. One of the reasons we're here, we think there's a great New York story. 13 of the panels have significant references to New York and its contributions to the history of knowledge. So this is, of course, treats the Harlem Renaissance, and you've got Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong, Langston Hughes, the great poets and writers of the Harlem Renaissance. And you can see that this, I think we'll have maybe a little bit later a showing of these actual panes that are not yet leaded. But you'll see it's even gone beyond here. So these 36 entries are now probably, I don't know, Tom, how many more would there be in this panel? 40 or 50 at this point? So another 40 or 50. So the part of the reason I gave Tom a deadline is because he just keeps adding stuff. And at some point, you know, as Tom is fond of saying, artworks are never finished, they're just abandoned. And so we are forcing him to abandon on November 17th so that we can unveil on November 18th. And we're very grateful for that. So with that, I think I've got a short video here, and then I'm finished.
Our idea is, to have an interactive art experience, and as you look at it and say, why can't I change the world as well? Why can't I do that? And that's what we are hoping.
We've created mind maps, just written down everything, kind of separated it into different eras, different timelines.
So I get a sketch and convert it into the Photoshop version by taking photos of different images, meshing together all kinds of different things into one window, a panel.
Once we have that design the way that we like it, we go through with Illustrator and create lead lines and piece out the glass that we'd like to, and take them into the painting room where all of our artists, we can sit down and paint the image that needs to go in those pieces.
It's so vibrant. It's really hard to make it that bright with just the paint. There are certain types of glass that just take your breath away. Of course, if we did the whole thing out of that, it would take years and years and years and years to finish.
We have light tables that we can see the window without putting it together. That way we can change a piece and say, wow, I don't like how that turned out. This needs to be brighter, that needs to be darker. We'll go through and tweak that, and then we just build it and put the lead around each piece and put it together.
As Tom and Cameron and the other artists at Holdman Studios were working on these windows, they would give us a concept art drawing, and they would then get feedback from the scholars on the team about things that might be missing, things that needed to be changed, were they inaccurate, and so we would give them feedback on developing the concept of each window.
UVU is much more than just the repository or the home of the project. it is being integrated into their culture, into their academics, into their curriculum, into their engaged learning.
I designed a project for my students last semester in the honors colloquium class that engaged them in writing entries that will be used when digital support medium are developed for the Roots of Knowledge project, so for the app or for other displays we might want to make in the library. There's a lot of curation that's going to be necessary for this project, and so I engaged my students in writing some short encyclopedia-style entries for each of the items that were chosen to go in the windows.
Before we had reached the School of Athens, the Raphael painting, we had previous references of images of people that we have in the window. And when the designers were reaching this part of the window, one day they just pulled me in and were like, well, we're taking you a picture of you to put in the School of Athens. And that's what we're gonna do for this panel. And I was incredibly excited. One of my friends on the project painted me, and watching him paint me was very exciting, and then seeing me be in the window was incredible. So I'm also near my mom, so it's pretty cool.
There's a tremendous richness to all of the panels that Tom has developed. One that I feel a particular affection for is the panel that covers the late 1700s. Of course, central to the frame then is the signing of the Declaration of Independence, but it goes well beyond the founding fathers. So we have an image of the fourth emperor of the Qing dynasty, Kangxi. We have a Japanese incense burner from the Edo period. There's an image of Mary Wollstonecraft, a famed Enlightenment feminist figure and philosopher. That's, again, one of the things I love about these panels is the richness and the breadth of what's covered. There's something there to engage almost every mind and subject of interest. My hope for the project was that it could, in many ways, reflect all of the core themes that we have as a university, that would be a serious work of art, that it would reflect the best of traditions, both in terms of art glass itself, but also the visual components of it, that people would look at it and say that's a very powerful, inspiring look, but that it tries to bring in all of the key things that are happening in the unfolding of human civilization that are happening all over the world.
Every single person has potential to be someone in this window. The Roots of Knowledge also contains seeds, and that we all have a seed inside of us that can make us a huge contributor to the history of knowledge, and that's a massive part of this window to me, is that we're all a part of it.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we may not get a chance, but Tom, you got to stand and just let us applaud you and all this. And as the other panelists are joining us, Victoria, can I have you join me up here for just 1 second? So we needed to come to New York, and we needed a partner, and we found the perfect partner. And so we are so grateful for you just opening your doors. Your staff has just been superb. It's the perfect venue, and you guys have just been over backwards. And maybe most importantly of all, we've discovered a sister institution. Your mission is Utah Valley's mission. And so on behalf of the Utah Valley University Foundation, with full support of that board, I would like to present a gift to you for your mission and your school to move forward what you're trying to accomplish here in New York.
Thank you so much. And as you're coming to learn, and thank you, President Holland, but the honor is truly all of ours. We've grown attached to all of you, but again, I'll let the program continue, and thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm sure that we could have conversation late into the night. There are so many stories and stories behind the stories, but I have a few questions that I'd like to address to each of the collaborators and also to our guest speaker, Cybele Maylone. President Holland, let me start with you. The Roots of Knowledge is truly unique among several recent commissions on university campuses in the United States that specifically integrate works of glass art into architecture. 3 examples that I can think of are the new Ellsworth Kelly design meditation building at the University of Texas at Austin, with stained glass by the Franz Mayer Studio in Germany, Doug and Mike Starnes' arboreal glass sculpture at Princeton University, and the new stained glass commission at Wellesley College's Houghton Chapel by the artist Jeffrey Gibson. So I just wanted to put this into the context of activity around the country, but to acknowledge how unique it is. President, how did you approach, just in concrete terms, the philosophy of engaged learning around this project? And because so many people in the New York audience are interested in how money gets raised for such a risk-taking endeavor, how did you lay the groundwork and get campus buy-in for devoting such resources to a visionary endeavor that would last into perpetuity?
Okay, well, thank you. First of all, in terms of how it stacks up against some of these other projects that you mentioned, it is interesting. There seems to be a little surge of interest and involvement in stained glass with these major installations at other universities. So I think we're part of an early part of what may be a movement, a return to the restoration of stained glass as a medium of interest on university campuses. But I think ours really is very different in several ways. First of all, on scale. I happened to be at Princeton just over the weekend visiting with some former colleagues and friends and saw the display there. I've read about the others. The other projects count their numbers of glass in the hundreds, 600, 700 pieces of glass. Tom's product has 60,000 pieces of glass to it. It's 200 feet wide, so there's really nothing to compare with it in terms of scale. It also is unique, I think, in the way it's about a story. It's about a visible, accessible story of human knowledge, whereas I think a lot of these other projects is almost art for sort of art's sake. I'm sure there's some meaning that is embedded and could be teased out, but here there's a story to tell about the development of human civilization and knowledge, and that leads to the third point, which is it is designed from the beginning to be a vehicle for learning. It is to inspire engagement and students asking questions and wanting to learn more, and so we are going to use it as a literal daily tool on our campus in courses like Kate's creating, capstone courses, what will happen at elementary and junior high and high school. So I think those are some of the things that distinguish it. In terms of making it a community engaged project, yes, from the beginning, we thought, well, we can't, look, there are reasons that universities and our society really don't do projects like this anymore. We've become much more efficient. We just don't have the sort of cultural wherewithal to do things on grand scale like this, and it's kind of been a loss for us. So we knew if we do it, we couldn't ask the state for money. I couldn't use taxpayer dollars, so we were going to have to raise money. And we haven't raised any money, so none of you are leaving tonight until... so I'm kidding, sort of. No. So we've raised about $3 million to support this project, and all I can tell you is the turning point was, it was a little hard going at first, to be honest with you, when we just describe it conceptually. But you're right, it was kind of an act of faith, and we just said, we believe in the project. We think in the Kevin Costner terms, if you build it, they will come. And so we turned Tom loose, and he built it on grand scale. And once we started to get numbers of panels that we could then get people to come in and see, that's when it turned, and then the money came in to support it moving forward.
$3 million sounds like a lot of money, but there have been old master paintings that have sold for that at auction in Christie's in the last several weeks. So, it's a matter of perspective, and they will come.
Yeah.
I'd like to move to Tom Holdman. Thank you, President. Tom, thank you for sharing your deep expertise and your sources of inspiration with us through this remarkable work. I've really learned so much in the last few days and come to appreciate what you've given of yourself. I'm curious to know, in the context of the lineage of artists familiar to this audience who've worked in this medium, for example, Henry Matisse's chapel at Vence, John Lafarge's stained glass windows, and Clara Bird's work for Tiffany, what originally inspired or motivated you to enter into this particular medium of stained glass?
So then I'm like stained glass, like when I first got a hold of a piece of glass, I mean, I was in a wonder, I've always had though the like hard time I'm like speaking. I have a slow tongue at times, I guess you can say. But though, like when I was growing up, I had to, or else, like I got to express myself in other ways, and then when it comes to art glass, it is it's a partnership with three things. And that is, like you as the artist, and then the glass, and then a light. And so, I thought that, if I had two other horses, I like speaking, glass and I like light, then I won't have to speak so much, right? But though with us like light, that is a powerful partner. And then how like light will alter an art piece, and so like you are not only like making like one art piece, yeah, but like you are making 100 art pieces, as it will alter and change and like with the light. And so I just I looked at the looked at the old masters, and I got inspired. A good art will always inspire other good art.
What you just said about light as another, it's more than an ingredient. It's a force, and your articulation of the way in which light alters the work over time just hit me. I'm going to ask you another question, which is from the perspective of an artist to an artist. As I was thinking about this project and all the participants and voices and visions that go into it, I thought how challenging that would be for an artist to harness all of that knowledge and energy and ideas and perspectives. What were some of the important artistic or aesthetic considerations for you, Tom, in terms of weaving together the narrative, storytelling, and educational function of Roots of Knowledge with its aesthetic integrity? Is there an example of a challenging artistic decision that you had to make in the work to unify all of these needs?
President talked about early on, it was only like me and Cameron, you know, like working on this art, like sketches. And then I had to do homework, and I had to do more homework, and I had to do more homework. I mean, like learning about the world, it was a lot. And then I thought, you know, do we like really believe that everyone who can add to the knowledge of like mankind, and if I believe that like no matter who you are, or else like where like you come from, everybody can have like moments of genius, and so like why not have them help you? I mean, like, am I like narcissistic, you know, like enough that it has to be my way. I mean, it is like my art, and this is how it is. No. I mean, like, we can make a better piece of art, or else like more than an art piece, you know, like a piece which explains the like humanities, you know, like if we, you know, like use all of the disciplines of that. And so I said, everybody help me.
That's really hard to do, I'll tell you.
It is.
Really hard to do. Kate, you were a member of the Scholars Committee that included Wayne Hanowitz, the Director of Integrated Studies, and other faculty. As a university educator, how would you describe the impact on your own work? And I'm especially curious about how you initiated, vetted, and curated the student research and writing that was inspired by the visual imagery generated by Tom's team of artists.
It's really a fascinating story, and I think that I was such a great fit to become part of this team because a great deal of my own work as a scholar has been collaborative work. I've done a number of editions and collections of essays in my own field of literary studies, but always with a partner. I'm much less interested in the sort of monkish scholar in the study pursuit than I am in working and talking with other people. I'm much more productive that way. And so I was given an idea by a scholar at the University of Victoria in British Columbia. She was developing a huge website called the Map of Early Modern London, and she was seeking out pedagogical partners. She wanted faculty to assign students to do articles for particular items on this map of London, and that the faculty member would serve as the editor, the students would generate content, so we would be then like the peer review, and that would then go up on this website. And so I worked with her, and my students wrote an article on the Curtain Theatre, which is currently being excavated in central London, one of the first theatres where Shakespeare's company played before they moved to the Globe. And so then when we were thinking and working on this project, even before it was time to really assign students to do work, I started thinking how to pull in my students to this project. And I thought a very similar model might apply on a pretty grand scale. So I had this really big class, the Honors Colloquium. We meet for an hour once a week. It's an experiential learning class. The students hear interesting speakers. We have money given to us by the university to take them to do amazing things. They go to the symphony and the ballet, the Sundance Film Festival. They go on camping trips. They go to lectures and all kinds of stuff. But we also make them think about stuff and hear challenging ideas. And so I had this idea that I was going to make those students, primarily freshmen, write encyclopedia articles on the model that was given to me by my colleague Janelle Genstad at the University of Victoria. And so this sort of collaboration between faculty members, between scholars, between student and faculty member to generate academic content is very powerful. The students learn research expertise, they gain confidence, they have a sense that the writing they're doing is applied. I think very suitable for the venue that we're holding this talk in is that the work that people do, it needs to be used, it needs to be seen. Knowledge isn't very interesting if it just sits. It needs to be employed in some fashion.
This sounds so much broader than just delivering content over media.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds to me like this experience empowered your students to understand that they too could generate original research and knowledge.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was lucky enough to co-teach a class with President Holland a couple of years ago, and we actually explained to the students at the beginning of the class what a seminar was, because most college freshmen don't know what that is. In Utah, at public high schools, the classes are very large. They don't understand what it's like to sit with 15, 14 other people and be that seedbed of knowledge, very applicable to the roots theme of this window, that you are all growing the knowledge together, that everybody has a role in that. And that's what makes it so powerful.
That's so exciting. Cybele, I'd like to come back around to you. And as the director of Urban Glass, you're at the center of an artistic and educational community that is dedicated to training the next generation of glass artists, as well as enriching the vocabulary of how glass is used as a medium for expression with the general public, whatever that is. As an art historian and educator who is also a leader in the New York art and design community, how do you respond to seeing this ambitious art form take shape in the form of Roots of Knowledge that will be integrated within a university setting in a distant part of the country, from New York City that is, such as Utah?
Well, I mean, I know I've probably said this individually to all of you, and I probably said this earlier. I'm so struck by the scale of this project. As you're saying this, I've never seen the Starnes work, but I've seen images of that work at Prince. I mean, this is so mind-boggling in the most amazing way. That both the physical scale of the work itself and also the scale of the work behind it. I think is really inspiring, and I think, yes, it also speaks to this renewed interest in stained glass, this desire to engage with this material or this form of art making that has been employed by artists for centuries, but also to do it in a contemporary way in contemporary settings. I think this is the kind of project that people in New York wish we had the space to think about. I think it's an inspiring kind of undertaking of art making, and the collaborative aspects of it, I think, couldn't fit better within a glass-making context. So it all seems so of a piece, but also so ambitious in the most inspiring way.
That's really wonderful. We are going to open up the floor for some questions. I would just like to call your attention to the fact that the scale of the finished piece is really, I just think of the Capitoline Hill in Rome and the size of those monumental sculptures. It really must be experienced physically in person to grasp. The last two panels, Tom, you'll have to I'll cue you here because I'm trying to remember specifically the content. You talked about it a little bit earlier. The last two panels that are being worked on now actually point to New York City, don't they?
Right. Well, I mean, how do you end this? You know, I mean, if you are showing all of like mankind or else like humankind, and so like what like we did though, like really is that it all like merges as like one city, and so like we have a lot of the like New York like landscape on there, and also two buildings around the world, and then like we have also too though, you know, like a virtual city as though like well, you know, like we have a building like made of fiber optics, you know, and then we have a building like made of words, you know, and so like it's a virtual one and then an actual one, and then I know I have a deadline. Except though I keep on getting ideas, and then I mean, even though like while I have been here, I have gotten ideas. I mean, like I went over to Ground Zero, you know, I saw these survivor and I just knew that I needed to add that in there. You know, I mean, it's an emblem, you know, like we all have our struggles and our hard challenges, yeah, but if we hold through and then hold to it, you know, like we will survive. And then like what like Matt like has said, yeah, I mean at the start it was hard, you know, like I said, I got this great idea, you know, and they say, you know, like where is it? I said, it's up in here.
Right.
It's pretty darn cool. but they were all, well, I mean, how much is this going to cost, you know? But though, what I haven't like realized though too, you know, like looking at that tree, and then I mean other events. I mean, if you have a strong enough conviction, you know, like you can handle any affliction, and that'll help you in though helping like your ideas happen. So
I couldn't agree more. And I don't know if you believe in reincarnation, but it would help in this case because you would have more lives to complete all these projects. What are the questions that we have from the audience? Let's take a couple minutes. Yes. And is there a microphone, Karen? Okay. 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 Thank you.
Two really quick questions. Number one, where is Utah Valley University? In Salt Lake City?
It's in Orem, Utah, so it's about 40 miles south of Salt Lake and about 8 miles east of Provo, Utah.
Second question, will you publish a book with the color panels and the explanations?
So we have been working so hard to get the windows done, drawn, blown, fired, installed, and unveiled, and talked about that we haven't spent as much thought yet about that, but all I can tell you is we've not yet begun to fight. So, yeah. So there'll be a book or books. We're going to design an app where you can hold the phone up and scan it across the windows and have the historical reality pop out so that the students can have an interactive learning tool. We want to be able to put this online in some fashion for those folks who are not fortunate enough to come to Orem, Utah, which you shouldn't miss in life, by the way.
But it's really easy to get there.
Yeah.
Orem is right on I-15. I mean, UVU is right on I-15. Like, our campus abuts the freeway. And so as you're driving from Salt Lake City to Las Vegas, you can just pull off the road. And we're going to have visitor parking now. I don't even know the administrative hassles. And they're also working on a documentary with a filmmaker named Lee Groberg that's going to sort of mirror the story that Tom has told about the Roots of Knowledge. So there's a lot still to be done, at least a decade more work.
At least.
Other questions? Yes, the woman in the front.
I don't know anything about
Wait for the microphone, please.
The stained glass, but we were looking up there. I mean, is it hand painted, some of the pieces? All of them?
All of it's hand painted.
Well, so then, how it works, if you were to use paint, though, like a normal paint, as it is exposed to the sun, it would like fade over time. And so all of the paint is actually like smashed up art glass, like in a powder form. And so then we, apply it on, and then we will heat it up to 1200 degrees. Yeah, so then it will actually fuse into the other piece of glass. And then also, too, if you were to hand carve out sections of the glass, like more light, will come through it, and so then, we also hand carve the glass as well.
Because I always thought of stained glass just as mosaics, but this is not just mosaics.
Right.
There are some panels that have mosaics within them, but the predominant method is the one Tom just explained.
But also, too, in here, it though isn't only stained glass. We have added artifacts, like real antiques, and then objects into it, like laced into it.
So that panel I told you about that I love from the late 1700s, there's a $5 bill from 1777 that's layered into the windows. Yeah.
Maybe one more question. Do we have time? Okay.
And on just a little bit more about even the pop culture references, which we were so enjoying, and the agar and all of those, because it's a treasure to know about it when you're looking at that. And then can you also say what ended up in there, the hammer in hand? That was a late thought.
Yeah. Oh yes, we did add that into there. Like it is on the tree of industry. Like we added that image up there on there.
I would like to thank President Matthew Holland, Tom Holdman, Kate McPherson, and Cybele Maylone for this incredibly inspiring conversation tonight, and invite everyone to join us at the reception for a more informal conversation and to view the exhibition. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Karen.
That's great. Thank you.
Could I just ask for your forbearance just for a minute, if you would just hold on 1 second?
Oh, yeah, could have gone.
We would just, first of all, we'd like to express our appreciation to our wonderful panel, and particularly to Rebecca for organizing it. President Holland, it's been an honor to have you here. And Tom, it's meant so much to us personally to get to know you and your family over these last few days, and to see this wonderful, exquisite, collaborative project bearing fruit. So thank you so much. And before you go, we would like to make a short presentation, very short.
And I would also like to add to Karen's comments, and I'll be brief. Where do I begin? I mean, we've come to know each other in a very short period of time, but we feel like we do know each other forever. So I share with you in terms of a sisterhood, a brotherhood, and we are one. Just as Roots of Knowledge is the work brings us all together, and to see Tom's family also be a part of this as well, Gail and TJ, and to hear them stand there and describe. We had Open House New York, and over 400 people came and saw the work, but the excitement, oh my goodness. And you have to admit, a New York audience, well, they were everyone was supportive and interested, and of course there's those who approach it with discerning, like, I'm not sure I'm gonna like this, but by the end of it they're saying, this was a real couple talking, now you know we have to go see the rest of this, we have to get plane tickets to Utah. So Rebecca and Stephen and President Holland's family, because everyone arrived when Cameron came the first night, and James, and then Tom showed up. But what I loved watching them was just, they were a family together in support, standing there with the project, and so that was beautiful to witness. And this project, Roots of Knowledge, and it's really hard to stand here before you and try to say this to you eloquently, but I'll say it comes at such an important time. When I describe this organization, we are stewards of a 231-year-old organization, and I always say, well, it's a collective accomplishments. And I think about what came before me, and I'm also the daughter of a General Society president, and that is how I came to this organization, so I'm very aware of generations and the importance of that. But Roots of Knowledge reminds everyone that knowledge, and we are where we are because of collective accomplishments. And if they just stood before this great work and thought about that and really reflect and spend time with it, it would make this world a better place. Thank you for your contribution to that. Thank you. So, thank you. So on behalf of the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen, we would like to make a presentation. The General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen of the City of New York, founded 1785, expresses its gratitude to Tom Holdman. If I could just speak. I'll say Tom Holdman, artist of Holdman Studios, Roots of Knowledge, Illuminating Knowledge, creating a major stained glass installation to foster engaged learning at Utah Valley University, for his participation in the General Society Artisan Lecture Series. And the General Society also expresses its gratitude to Matthew Holland, Utah Valley University president, Illuminating Knowledge, creating a major stained glass installation to foster engaged learning at Utah Valley University, for his participation in the General Society Artisan Lecture Series. And thank you everyone who worked on this. And I also always thank our supportive audience. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Thank you. And